There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You show up, you do the reading, you say the prayers, you try to be better by Monday, and somehow you end the week more worn out than when you started, quietly wondering if you're doing this right. And the strange thing is, hours before he was arrested, Jesus told a room of exhausted men that the answer was not to try harder, it was to stay. Everything he meant is buried inside one small word, and once you see it, the weight you've been carrying starts to lift. And where he says this matters as much as what he says. It's the last night. Jesus knows what's coming. In a few hours, soldiers with torches. By morning, a cross. And in these final hours, out of everything he could have said, out of every last instruction he could have left behind, he reaches for something you could grow in your own backyard, a grapevine. He looks at them and says, in plain words, I am the true vine. My Father is the one who tends it. And you, all of you, you are the branches. Now sit with that picture for a second, because it's doing more work than it looks like. Think about a branch on a vine. What is its actual job? What does a branch do to make grapes? Nothing. But look at what a branch actually does. It doesn't grunt or strain, and it has never once, in the whole history of the world, woken up at 5 a.m. determined to produce an impressive crop this quarter. It has never tried to make fruit at all. A branch does exactly one thing. It stays attached. It stays connected to the vine, and the life of the vine flows up into it, and the fruit just happens. As a byproduct, as the natural overflow of staying joined to something alive. Then he says it plainly. A branch cannot bear fruit on its own. It has to stay joined to the vine. And then he turns it on the men sitting in front of him. The same is true of you, he says. Not unless you stay joined to me. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Not a little. Not you'll be less effective. Nothing. And go back for a second to the word he opened with. Not just vine. The true vine. In that world, the vine was Israel's own symbol. It was pressed onto their coins, and the historian Josephus tells us a massive golden vine hung over the entrance to the temple in Jerusalem, so large that its carved grape clusters were said to be the height of a grown man. Some scholars think that by this point in the night, Jesus and the disciples had already left the upstairs room and were walking through the dark toward the garden where he'd be arrested, close enough maybe to see that gold. So picture the moment. He may have stood in the shadow of the single greatest religious symbol his people owned, all that precious metal, and said, no, I am the true one. Not the building, not the system, not the record you keep of getting it right. Me. So already, before we go any deeper, the whole picture we've been carrying is upside down. We've been treating the Christian life like a branch that has to squeeze fruit out through sheer effort, and he's standing there saying, that's not how vines work. That's not how any of this works. But if the branch isn't supposed to strain, then what is it supposed to do? Because just stay attached sounds simple until you try to actually live it on a Tuesday afternoon. And that's where one word changes everything. The word Jesus keeps using over and over in this one short passage is the Greek word meno. Your Bible probably translates it abide, or remain, or stay. And in the space of about 10 sentences, he says it around 10 times. When someone repeats a word that many times in their final hours, they are not decorating, they are underlining. So what does meno actually mean? It means to remain, to stay put, to not leave. But it's warmer than that word usually sounds. It carries the idea of dwelling somewhere, of making a place your home and settling in for good. It's the difference between visiting a house and living in one. You can visit God on Sunday. You can drop by in a crisis. Meno is something else. Meno is moving in, unpacking your boxes, sleeping there, making it the place you come back to without even thinking about it. And staying like that is quieter than it sounds. It isn't a mountaintop moment. It's ordinary. It's coming back to him in the middle of a normal afternoon. Not because you're in a crisis, but because that's just where you live now. Talking to him in traffic, turning a verse over while you do the dishes. Nothing dramatic, nobody watching, just a branch staying joined and letting the life come up through it. And when you hold that next to how most of us actually approach our faith, the gap is enormous. Because there are really two ways to live this out. The first is striving. It looks busy. It even looks holy, which is exactly what makes it so hard to catch. It's the white-knuckle grip, the performing for God, the keeping score, the trying to earn a place you already have. Striving is a branch tensing every fiber to force out fruit that was never going to come from tension in the first place. And the second way is abiding. Meno, staying so close to the source that life just flows through you without the strain. One of them ends in exhaustion, the other ends in fruit. And from the outside, early on, they can look almost identical. Two people reading the same Bible, sitting in the same pew, saying the same words. But one is drawing water from a well, and the other is running a treadmill and calling it a journey. There's a detail in verse 2 that most people read straight past. Jesus says the Father tends the vine, and the tending has two parts. The branches with no fruit he takes away, but the branches that are bearing fruit he prunes, he cuts them back. And there's something buried in the original Greek that most people never hear. The word for prune here is kathairo. One breath later, Jesus tells the disciples they are already clean because of what he's spoken to them. And the word he reaches for is katharos, same root. In the language he said it in, pruning and cleansing are nearly the same word. So the cutting was never the gardener turning against the plant. It's how he cleans it. It's how he clears away what's dead so the living part can carry more. Read that again, slowly. The branches that are already working, that are already producing, those are the ones that get cut. If you have ever been in a season where things were finally going well, and then, out of nowhere, everything got harder, quieter, stripped back, you may have assumed you did something wrong. You may have assumed God walked away. But a gardener doesn't prune a plant he's given up on. He prunes the one he has plans for. We'll come back to why that matters more than almost anything else in this chapter. Because first, you need to understand why trying harder doesn't just fail. It actually makes the whole thing worse. So let's talk about you, or at least the version of you that clicked on this video. Maybe you've been the responsible one. You read your Bible, you showed up, you served. You said yes when you were already stretched thin. And somewhere along the way, the joy quietly drained out of it, and you were left doing all the right things while feeling absolutely nothing. If that's you, I want you to hear this carefully, because it's the whole point. That emptiness is not a sign you need to try harder. It's the exact symptom Jesus was warning about. It's what happens to a branch that keeps producing on momentum while slowly, quietly, drifting away from the vine. Because here's the mechanics of it. When you strive, when you perform, you put yourself back at the center. You make it about your effort, your consistency, your discipline, your streak. And the moment you become the source, you've stopped drawing from the real one. You can run on your own reserves for a while. Everybody can. But reserves run out. And no one warns you before they do. And it usually doesn't happen all at once. That's the cruel part. It's slow. You keep showing up, keep serving, keep doing the things that used to fill you. And one day you notice they've started to cost you instead. The prayers feel like talking to the ceiling. The worship songs are just words. You're still going through every motion, and inside there's nothing coming up the stem. A branch can stay green at the tip for a surprisingly long time after it's been cut. That's exactly what makes it so easy to miss. And the people this quietly happens to are almost never the ones you'd expect. This is why the most burned out people in any church are often the ones doing the most. They mistook activity for connection. They assumed that if they just did more for God, they'd feel closer to God. But the vine doesn't work on volume. A branch producing frantically on its own strength is not more connected than a branch resting quietly attached. It's less. And apart from me, you can do nothing, stops being a threat, and starts being a mercy. Think about what he's actually letting them off the hook for. He's saying, you were never meant to carry this. The pressure you feel to generate your own spiritual life, to manufacture your own peace, to force your own growth. Put it down. It was never your job. Fruit is not something you achieve. It's something you receive and then overflow. And notice he doesn't say fruit doesn't matter. He says it matters enormously. He says his Father is glorified when you bear much fruit. And it's real fruit, real love and patience and change in how you actually treat the people around you. He isn't telling you to do nothing. He's telling you where the fruit comes from. It comes from staying, not from striving. The doing flows out of the staying, never the other way around. Which raises the obvious question. If it's that simple, if it's just stay connected, why do so many sincere, disciplined, genuinely good people spend years, sometimes whole decades, stuck on the treadmill? The answer is something we don't usually say out loud, and it's the reason this chapter still stops people 2,000 years later. The hardest thing about abiding is what it feels like from the inside. It feels like doing nothing. And for someone who has built their whole identity on being useful, being reliable, being the one who gets things done, doing nothing feels like failure. It feels like laziness dressed up as faith. So they reach for effort, not because they're rebellious, but because effort is the only language they know how to speak to God. And that's where the trap springs shut. Because even your spiritual striving, even your discipline, even your determination to finally get serious about God, can quietly become the thing that keeps you from Him. It puts you back in the center. It makes it your project again. Sit with how strange that is. The very hunger to try harder for God can be the subtle move that pulls the branch away from the vine. You can be reaching for Him with one hand while unplugging yourself with the other and never notice you're doing it. So the real work of this whole passage isn't adding more effort. It's learning to receive. And for a certain kind of person, receiving is the single hardest thing in the world. You know these people. Maybe you are one. The friend who can give you a ride to the airport at 4 a.m. without blinking, but cannot let you buy them a coffee. The one who shows up for everyone and quietly falls apart alone because being helped feels like being weak. Grace is offensive to that person. Being loved without earning it feels almost unbearable because if you can't earn it, you can't control it. And a branch cannot control the vine. It can only stay and drink and trust that what flows in is enough. Which brings us back to the pruning and to the part that changes how you read your own life. Remember, the branches that bear fruit are the ones that get cut back. So that painful season you've been in, the one where things got stripped away, where the noise went quiet and the easy answers stopped working, and you felt more alone than you had in years. What if that wasn't abandonment? What if the gardener came close with the blade precisely because he saw fruit worth protecting? Pruning hurts. There's no version where it doesn't, but you only prune a plant with a future. You cut back the vine you love so that next season it carries more than it ever could have carried before. So the point of the whole passage turns out to be almost embarrassingly gentle. You were never the vine. You were only ever the branch. The pressure to produce, the exhaustion, the scorekeeping, the fear that you're not doing enough, all of it comes from trying to be a vine when you were made to be a branch. And a branch held by a vine, tended by a gardener who loves it, does not have to be afraid. It doesn't have to perform. It doesn't have to hold itself on. It just has to stay. And staying, it turns out, is not passive at all. It takes more trust than striving ever did. So think back to where we started. That tired that sleep doesn't fix. You know now that it was never a sign you needed to do more. It was a branch quietly telling you it had drifted from the vine. Stop trying so hard was never permission to stop caring. Jesus cared more in that room on that night than anyone ever has. It's an invitation to stop carrying what you were never built to carry and to move back in close to the one whose life was always meant to flow through you. This week, before you add one more thing to your list, try subtracting instead. 10 quiet minutes. No agenda, no performance, no producing. Just staying. Just abiding. And watch what starts to grow when you stop forcing it. If this gave words to something you've been feeling for a long time, subscribe and stay with me. Next, I'm walking through what Jesus meant just a few verses later when he called us his friends, not his servants, and why that single word rewrites your whole relationship with God. It's on screen now. Go watch it.